The gospel reading this morning came out of the book of Mark. We've been in the book of Mark for the last few weeks, and we're going to continue in the book of Mark all the way up to Thanksgiving, which is soon. Isn't that unfortunate? Like, I'm not very thankful sometimes for Thanksgiving because it means that Christmas is coming. And life is crazy in the midst of all of this, but this is where we are. And it seems appropriate that as life begins to amp up, this is the season, everything takes on a bit of a frenzied pace. As it begins to amp up, it seems like this is a good time to be speaking into our lives about what it means to confess Christ with our lives. And each one of these passages has reflected some aspect of that. We've walked through a big portion of Mark to bring us to this point. And the gospel reading you heard this morning may not sound at first blush like it's about confessing Christ. We hear Jesus kind of confronting the powers that be. Right, the Pharisees and the Sadducees with their big coin purses and their large offerings, the widow and her mite, her 2 pennies. Right, it doesn't lend itself to proclaiming Christ, but that's because sometimes I think we're listening with the wrong ears. So let me help tune your ears this morning by beginning this sermon by saying, this sermon is not about an offering. It's not about taking an offering. This sermon, the widow's mite and the man with his large offering is not some ploy to increase giving in our church. I'll be honest with you, you folks are amazing. Your giving is faithful. And we try to be faithful in our stewardship of that as well. We don't do many special offerings or many fundraisers because I believe a well-stewarded budget should take care of those things. If you're giving faithfully, why would we continue to ask you to give more and more and more? And so we do that. And an example of that is this past Sunday. Things like that come with a price tag. You know that. They come with a price tag. That price tag was about $1,400. Okay. I will say most of that overage came with our last minute runs when everything kept running out. You know when you're going at the last minute, you're not going for a deal. Right? And so that's what happens. But can I say $1,400 for that kind of a ministry is nothing. Like, I would do that every day of the week if we could. We spend so much time dealing with budgets and buildings and gable ends that need replaced and ceiling tiles that have water damage and all of this stuff. And sometimes by the end of the week and by the end of the month, it seems like we don't have much left to do what we're supposed to be doing with what we've been given. And it gets frustrating. Now, you folks have made that much less frustrating. We're not constantly battling the finances. And so don't hear this message today as me speaking into your life about how to guilt you into giving more. This is, first of all, this is a commitment you've made to God in this church, and I trust that commitment. And so this message is not about that. In fact, this message is really about worship. And worship has everything to do with confessing Christ. It has everything to do with it. It is about sacrificing what you have for the things that you love. That's what worship is. Let me kind of give you a definition of worship. Worship is the act of sacrificing what you have for that you love. It's the act of sacrificing whatever you have for that which you love. You see, automatically when I say worship, you're thinking about God and how we worship God. But can I say whether you believe in God or not, to some extent we are all worshipers. We all worship something. And the measure of our worship is in the sacrifice of our life. So imagine for a moment a future civilization comes and they begin unearthing the long dead American culture. Archaeologists, the way that we unearth Rome. You're like, well, America will never fall. Rome fell after 2,000 years of being around. Right? So who knows? And I picture it, honestly, I've watched and read too much science fiction. So I picture it like an alien civilization coming and digging up the remains of humanity and trying to figure out what we were like and what was important to us by the remnants we leave behind. Would they look at our coliseums that seat tens of thousands of people, where everyone wears the same colored shirts, sings the same stupid songs, like here's a stupid song. Right? Do you know how hard it is to put that in your notes? So imagine if they uncovered these massive coliseums that seat tens of thousands of people, where we're all wearing the same shirts, we're all singing the same songs, we're all paying an offering, we're all taking communion in the form of a hot dog in a bun, and we're all cheering on our favorite players in some kind of gladiatorial event. Would they say, well, this is a worship center? Obviously. And to some extent, maybe it is. Now, don't get me wrong. I love sleeping through football, right? I really do. And I love knowing just enough to talk trash with those of you that were born and raised in Kansas and think that the Kansas City Chiefs is actually a God-given thing. It always reminds me of that old axiom from Colorado. There's a reason why sunsets are blue and orange. God is a Broncos fan. There's a reason why the Chiefs' jerseys is the same color as the fires of hell. So the question is, what do you worship, right? Would they uncover our civilization and look at that and go, well, here's very obviously the center of who they are. This is how they identify themselves. Maybe they would find, I don't know, maybe they would find remnants of our TVs or our smartphones or whatever. Can I tell you, I was challenged with worship this week. On Friday morning at 7:57 a.m., the internet went down in our neighborhood. Oh, it was horrible. It was horrible. And it didn't come back up until like 7 or 8 o'clock that night. It was horrible. And I used to look at those poor saps around me who are always on their phones, who can't think without their phone in their hand, and I thought, oh, you poor idiots, when all of this goes away, you're not going to know what to do with yourself. Turns out I'm one of those idiots. I was genuinely surprised that I was dressed and fed for the day. Like, I could not think. And I'd say, I'd go to do something, and I'd think, well, I need to Google that. Right? Would they find the remnants of our phones and our TVs and go, oh, well, they just carried their idols in their back pockets? Maybe they would find the remnants of long-gone YouTube videos or TikTok choreography. Ooh, what would they? Not mine, not Tim's. The question is what would they say we worship? What would they say we worship? Remember, worship is the act of sacrificing for that which you love, and I might even say love the most. Now, I realize this is overly simplistic. For instance, I love my kids, usually. I sacrifice large amounts of energy, time, and money to their well-being. I don't think I worship them. But then again, maybe I'm too close to know, because I see parents that do worship the lives of their children, and it controls them. And so maybe I do. I don't know. I don't think I do, but maybe that's something. So again, I don't want to be too simplistic, because if I'm not devoting time, energy, and resources into my kids, that's a problem, right? And it requires vast amounts of all of those things. So I don't want to be overly simplistic. Things like we invest large amounts of capital into our houses. We've got to have a place to live, whether you rent or buy or make some other arrangement. We've got to have places to live. It's a necessity. So I'm not saying because you've invested large amounts of time and energy into your house that you worship your house or whatever. Again, I recognize that I'm oversimplifying this. Maybe in my house, again, an oversimplification, education. We invest a lot of time, energy, resources, tears, frustration, angst, and anxiety to education. Is it a God in our home? Maybe it has been. Maybe it has been in our culture. Again, I don't want to make this overly simple. But take a step back for a moment in your imagination of your own life, like you're the archaeologist uncovering the remnants of your life. Examine yourself in your imagination from outside of your own eyes. Examine as if you are someone else excavating the truth of your life, like an archaeologist who's trying to understand who you were by examining what's left, what remains. What would they say you worship? Does the measure of your worship, your sacrifice, reflect the thing that you say you truly love? That's a hard question, isn't it? And I don't know that there's an easy answer to this. And there's certainly not a formulaic answer for me to give to you, like your life should consist in these amounts of percentages, that time, energy, resources go into 10% of this part of your life and 20% of that part. We can't do that. Life lives itself in cycles and rhythms and seasons, and we can't do that. We can't say, here's the formula for it. But living in your own skin, but stepping back and examining your life, what do you worship? This is really what this passage is about. So let's get back into the story. You heard the story read earlier. And I suspect that when Jesus sat down, notice it says right at the beginning of this passage in verse 41 that he sat down opposite of the treasury in the temple. The temple, of course, was not a building. It was a large complex with walls and gates and pavilions, and thousands of people would come. And so there was a treasury building, and there were offering boxes similar to what we have, except theirs were, I didn't know this till this week, theirs were shaped like shofars, you know, the ram horns, the trumpet. And, you know, in the Jewish culture, whenever you put in the offering box, they would say, shofar so good. Yeah, sorry. Even when I wrote it, I knew that wasn't very good, but whatever. But they'd have these offering boxes, and here Jesus sat just opposite of that. Now, we don't think much about that, except that just a few days earlier, in chapter 11 in our Markan text, but a few days earlier in the chronology, Jesus had walked into the temple and overturned the money changers' tables. So now he's back, and he sits down intentionally across from the treasury. Do you think he was being watched? Like, what is he going to do now? So I imagine everyone was kind of watching him, but instead of him doing anything, he in turn starts watching people. Do you like watching people? I love doing that, especially with binoculars. And look at me, I'm just creepy enough to pull it off. Like, can't you picture this weaselly little body behind a pair of binoculars, like looking in your windows? Yeah, it's legit. It's a Broncos fan, Daniel says. But Jesus just starts watching people. I do this especially at the football games here in Derby. All of Derby shows up, and I like watching the people. And I've determined there's three kinds of people that go to the football games. There's those that come to actually watch the football game. They love it, they cheer, they enjoy it. Where we've sat the last few times, there's three ladies that are more advanced in years than Dana and me and most of you, right? But they sit in front of us, and they're there to watch football. Cracks me up. The one lady, you can always hear her. They can't hear her on the field, but she always says, "Come on, guys. Come on, guys." And that's her cheer, is "Come on, guys." But there's people that come to watch the football game. Then there's people that come to see people, right? And they're there, and they're milling around to see who they can see and to visit who they can visit. And then third type are those that come to be seen by the people. You know, they're the point and wave crowd. You know, that crowd, right? They want to be seen by the people. Maybe there's a fourth category. There's those of us that go for the halftime show. You know, so maybe that's the fourth category. But Jesus is sitting down and he's watching the people, and they're filing past, and they're dropping their coins in, and he watches, and as he watches, there's a man that comes up, and he's got the long flowing robes, very expensive robes. Maybe they were dyed in expensive colors, right? We can get any color of the rainbow, but there were certain colors that were very hard to come by, purple and burgundy and some of these richer colors. It's why they're associated with royalty today. So maybe here comes this Pharisee with his long robes, and there's no holes, they're not tattered. These are well-kept robes, maybe a new outfit, right? And he comes, and his robes billow, and his cloaks just get caught in the wind, and he's got his purse on his belt. It's actually called a merce, a man purse, right? He's got his coin purse on his belt, and he comes jingling past, right? And right before he gets there, his big robes billowing out and making this great big scene of being present. Before he puts in his offering, he offers a prayer. You know, oh God, we read prayers like this throughout the gospel. One of the prayers was, oh God, a classic Jewish prayer was, oh God, thank you for not making me like one of these. Can you imagine him gesturing to the crowd around him? One of these, like a woman or a Gentile or a dog. That was a prayer. And they pray this, and maybe he prayed this big prayer and then dropped his coins in there, and you could hear it in this shofar-shaped coffer. You could hear it. You could hear the thud of the silver and the gold. It made a distinctive sound. And he throws his coins in, and everyone knew he had given something of worth, something valuable. He'd given a lot. He had given something that was going to make him a benefactor for this whole temple system. And Jesus watched him come and watched him go and really didn't say anything. And then the exact opposite of this man approaches. And if you weren't watching for her, you would have never seen her. The invisible person, so to speak. Her robes are old and maybe threadbare. She has no outer cloak. It's more burlap she's wearing than it is fine robes. I picture in my mind a little hunched over. Years have done that to her. Being alone all of this time. She was a widow. And in that culture, especially if you didn't have sons, you were left untaken care of, unprovided for. You really couldn't work. You certainly couldn't own property. And not just because she was part of the masses, the sub-bourgeois, right? She was the impoverished. She was the untouchable. And not just for that reason, but because she was a woman also. And this offering was in the court of women. Right? There was a place where the women couldn't go. But of course, they weren't going to put the offering plates where it was an exclusive crowd. They were going to put it where they could get the most from the most amount of people. So it's in the court of women. And she comes up. There's no purse on her belt, none draped over her shoulder. She's just clutching something in her hand. She approaches, and this guy billows away, big prayer. No one's really seeing the woman except Jesus. And very quietly, she just drops 2 coins in, copper coins. A lot of your translations say it equals about a penny. It actually equals less than a penny. Her 2 copper coins. They would have not made much sound in this. A couple little tinkles as they hit the other coins. That was about it. No thud, no rattling around, no rolling, just a pathetic little sound of 2 copper coins hitting the bottom of this coffer. Do you see the contrast that's going on? And Jesus notes it. He says, now, this one of power, this church official, in all of his finery, in all of his robes, with his big purse, he gave out of his abundance, but she gave out of her poverty. He gave out of excess. She gave everything she had. This is the story. And what a breathtaking story it is when we step back and we listen to it. And it really does evidence worship. You see, it's not the amount. Worship is not the amount. It's not the value of what the guy gave as opposed to the value of what the woman gave. It's not the dollar amount that measures the importance. It's the heart behind it. And do you recognize when we give only out of our abundance, out of our excess? And I'm not talking financially necessarily. I'm not discounting that. But when we give anything, time, energy, resources, attention to someone when we're talking to them. When we give anything out of abundance, what we are doing is we are binding them and binding ourselves to a kind of slavery. If I come with an abundant wealth and I give to the church in a way that everyone knows I've got more, but I just gave a lot, guess what we're going to do as a church? We're going to ingratiate ourselves to that person so we can get more. So we keep coming back. It's a kind of slavery. It's a kind of slavery. And so this man gives out of his abundance. And whenever we give out of abundance, we're keeping for ourselves something that never really even belonged to us. But the irony is that in keeping it, we never find what is greater. What we only have in our life is what we contain in our coin purse or whatever metaphor you choose to employ. But here comes this woman. She doesn't have anything. She doesn't have more than 2 pennies, and maybe these 2 pennies are her meal for that night, a loaf of bread. But she throws it in there, and this kind of freedom, I imagine, envelops her. The freedom of not owning anything, but being owned by the God who owns everything. There's a kind of freedom in this, of not knowing what I'm going to do, but knowing that God has promised good to me, as we sang earlier. Not that it's always going to turn up roses. Not that life is not going to hurt. Not that sickness isn't ever going to come into our lives or relationships are never going to fall apart. That's not what he's saying. But what he's saying is that when you give what you have, you're saying, I don't trust in these 2 cents and I don't trust in this bag of gold. I trust in the God who owns it all anyway, and he's going to get me through it. This is what it's about. This is what worship looks like. I've got to say, my parents have a bad habit of giving away stuff foolishly. They're foolish with their generosity at times. My whole life, I've watched the foolishness of their generosity. I did not know this, but I grew up in a poor home. I did not know that. I was never in want, never in need, never went hungry, never was cold, never was impoverished, but I did not know that we were poor, did not know that. And this is no way for me of saying, well, you say you were poor, I have it worse. No, I didn't. I had it good. So this isn't like that at all. And some of you have experienced poverty in ways that I have not. But knowing that my parents did not make much of anything ever. In fact, my dad, who is retiring at the end of this year, makes the most now as a pastor that he has ever made his entire life. And can I tell you, he makes less than me. And he's been at this as a pastor, he's been at this 30 years. And prior to that, he was in pest control. He always says hired killer before he became a hired saver. But here they are. They foolishly gave away, even in their poverty. And so here's what I remember as a kid. My parents always did foster care for 30 some odd years. They did foster care. And we had hundreds of kids come through. My earliest memories, I told a story a few weeks ago, my earliest memories are of foster kids. And not just foster kids, these were my brothers and sisters. I can tell you about Noreen that we talked about, or Josh, or Hans, or Jessica, who we adopted, Mindy, who we adopted, Joey, who we adopted, Kaylee, who my sister adopted out of foster care, Matthew, who was adopted, right? And the kids that came through, the Stephanies and the Michaels, we had them all come through. Every diagnosis you could think of, they'd come through. And here's what my mom and dad would do every time we'd get a placement in, because sometimes they'd come with almost nothing. So she'd look at the size of the kid, boy or girl. That was back in the day when you could tell the difference, right? And they would say to each of us kids, "Now go up to your room and pick out your favorite outfit." And we'd all go up and we'd pick out our favorite outfit, and we'd come down and they'd find what matched. And sometimes this would happen with placements of families. Foster families oftentimes are in kind of agreements with each other that one takes care of the other. And so we would do this all of the time. Pick out your favorite outfit. And we'd come down with our favorite outfit, and we'd look to see what fit. And our favorite outfits would go to whatever family. Now, eventually us kids got smart. Like, is that your favorite? Absolutely. Absolutely. Right? But they have this history of doing this, of giving in foolishness. My parents did not have the resources to replenish our wardrobe constantly. They didn't have those resources, but they gave foolishly again and again and again, and they still do it. I've watched them do it again and again and again. My parents just gave away a car because they saw a family that needed a car, right? They just do this. And I've seen this kind of foolish generosity. And I can give you a bow at the end of the story that my parents, who have scrimped and saved, who have been generous beyond belief, are retiring with relative ease, financial ease. And it's mind-boggling how they've done that. They lived by the standard that John Wesley set many years, centuries earlier. Earn all you can, save all you can, give all you can. And they live by that. And it has been a blessing in their life. And I'm not saying that's how it always works. But I've watched this. I've watched this kind of foolish generosity. And you don't live in a home like that and see witnesses like that and have it not affect you. Amen. It's because my parents never worshiped their jobs. They never worshiped their paychecks. They never worshiped a vehicle or their houses. They never worshiped their kids. To my memory, even though this is not their story before I was born, but to my memory, they've only ever worshiped God. And this has been the fruit of their life. And the people's lives whom they've changed and they've touched is countless. It's countless. And I say this story as a way of not indicting anyone in this room, but a way of, if anything, bolstering this church, because I see in my parents what I see in so many of you. And I see in so many of you what I've seen in my parents. Many of you have this habit of foolishly giving, foolishly, carelessly giving away what you've got because of your love for God, and God's kingdom is greater than your love for what you've been given. This is what the kingdom of God looks like. This is what it means to confess Christ. This is what worship looks like. You love that which you sacrifice for. And God, remember we learned this last week, God told us that the one command is actually two commands. Love God, love others. And the same God that sacrificed God's self for the sake of humanity now gives us the same mission. We sacrifice for the same people that God loves. I watched you do it last Sunday night. I've seen you do it when no one's watching. Some of you are in the church throughout the week or in homes throughout the week, like the widow, unseen, invisible, but there you are. There you are. You don't feel like you've got much to give except these 2 cents, but those 2 cents matter more than anything else in the world. And you give, and you give, and you give. And I want to say thank you, but I want to say not just thank you, but I want to also encourage you to keep it up, because this is the reality of what worship looks like in our life. And again, I want us to think, if we stepped back from our lives and someone else was looking at our life, or we were taking a perspective of our life from a third-party view, what would we say we worship? What do we sacrifice for? What do we sacrifice to? So I want to give us just some 3 basic points of application for this. The first thing is that there is a slavery in not letting go. The thing we cling tightly to becomes the thing that clings tightly to us. The tighter you hold on to something, the tighter it begins to hold on to you. Chinese handcuffs. Right? You ever seen those things? Or finger cuffs or whatever. You stick your fingers in and you try to pull your fingers out, and what happens? Tightens up. And the harder you fight, the more it tightens. This is kind of what happens in our life. We cling on to these things, and we cling on to them in such a way that they begin to cling on to us, that it becomes a reality in our life, so that what we've clung on to becomes our identity. We see this with addiction all of the time. Maybe illicit addiction, maybe addiction to relationships, maybe addiction to food, maybe addiction to likes on Facebook, maybe addiction to buying new clothes. Sorry, that was for me. Maybe I'm like the Pharisee, except mine aren't billowing robes. Mine, I'm just thrilled because they're still selling things in Slim Cut and in the boys section. Right, but maybe it's these kinds of addictions, right? It's this idea that the harder we cling to something, the more it clings to us. Have you seen that commercial, the series of commercials about the guy coaching people on how not to become like your parent? Right, the good dude with the mustache. They're hilarious. We were watching something the other night, and that commercial came on, and the dude with the pastels and the mustache, he's on there, and they're in a shopping mall, and the one guy that's trying not to become his parent is wearing this polo shirt, and he's getting ready to check out with another polo shirt. You seen that one? And the guy says, "Now wait, where have we seen this shirt before?" And he takes a minute, he looks down, and he sees his shirt. He looks at the one he's holding, they're the same shirt. And he goes, "Oh, well, I'm still going to buy it." So I paused the TV, I run into the bedroom, I came out with 2 exact same shirts. I did it! I couldn't believe it. I showed Dana. Dana's like, "You have got to be kidding me." They were the same exact shirt. I bought them twice. So I'm living into this, right? These things, the tighter we cling to them, the more they cling to us, and it begins to identify us like the same shirt, right? We begin to be seen by these things that we've clung to. It's the reality in our life that most people do not see things as they are, because they can only see things as they are. We only see things through our own eyes. And so we never truly see things as they truly are. And this is what happens. Things cling to our life in such a way that our own brokenness becomes the barrier to receiving freedom from what we have become. But when we let go of it, it begins to loosen its hold on us. Sometimes it doesn't happen in an instant. We've got to let go. And it begins to loosen its hold on us. And when we cling to that which is greater, when we cling to God, God's hold begins to tighten upon us so that God's imprint becomes imprinted upon our lives. See, this is how it works. So the first point of application is there is a slavery in not letting go. What are you slave to? What frustration in your life continually comes back? There's not an instant solution, but there is a starting point. You've got to begin letting go. It was interesting. I was that oversung Christmas song from the first Frozen movie, Let It Go, right? Oh, help us all. I've heard it so many times I've stopped listening to it except to throw things at the radio, right? But I heard a version of it on a program, and I had never really listened to the words before. They're actually very profound words. And there was something in her life that had defined her, but it had made her frozen and shut off. I mean, she's singing about these things, unapproachable, and she's just finally going to let it go. Now, I'm not going to tell the Disney story the way that Disney tells the story, but there is a point of application there that there are things in our life that we begin by escaping our slavery by letting go. So that's the first thing. Here's the second thing. There is a freedom in sacrifice. There's a freedom in sacrifice. When you give what you've got, then what you have no longer has you. There's a freedom here. You're like, but it's all I've got. Sometimes our lack, our 2 cents worth, our pittance, our 2 mites are actually a bigger God than God itself, because we remind God of how much I don't have. I don't have enough. I don't have enough. And so we hang on to this 2 cents because we don't have enough, and we never give anything beyond that. Again, this is not a sermon about money. This is a sermon about worship. And we hang on to these things because we feel like we don't have enough to let go. And if I let go of this thing that has defined me for so long, I don't know who I am anymore. Until finally, we recognize that who I am is not who I want to be. And the only way I'm going to become something new is to sacrifice what remains, as little and as broken as it may be. And God begins to do something new. There's a freedom in that. I've used this as an illustration before, but if you've ever been in over your head in debt, and you never really pay attention to it, right? You just pay the minimum balances as they come due. You spend your $30 there, the overdraft here, this, there, and it's just these bits and pieces. And then finally someone says, no, we need to sit down and put it all together. Let's see, how much do you owe here? How much do you owe here? How much do you owe here? Let's do it. Let's figure out what that bottom line is. And you see that number and you go, oh, you had no idea. Right? And it just makes you sick in your stomach. And at first there's that gut punch. But then something happens. You see it, the truth is out there, and after that initial gut punch, there's a kind of freedom. You've been discovered. You've been found out. There's nothing left to protect. There's nothing left to hide. Here it is. It's a mess, and this is what you got. There's a freedom there. If you've never experienced it, there's a freedom there in being caught and being found out. And this freedom is the sacrifice, because part of this is we let this thing go as well. And this is the sacrifice. We sacrifice what we have for the sake of what we love. And if what we have is just brokenness, if it's just 2 pennies, it matters not. If it's despair and heartache, we sacrifice that. It doesn't mean we stop feeling. It means that we sacrifice this thing that has consumed our life so that we can be made free of it, so that God can begin to do something new entirely in our life. Because as long as we hang on to that, we're not free. There is a freedom in sacrifice. And the thing that we want to get rid of the most is often the thing that we're afraid to get rid of the most. Because it's going to hurt. Like picking at a scab or cutting off a tumor. It's going to hurt. You know it's got to go. But it's a painful process. But on the other side of this is freedom. There is freedom in sacrifice. So here's the first thing. There is slavery and not letting go. There is freedom in sacrifice. And then finally, there is joy in surrendering all that we have. A profound joy. What comes on the other side of this, whether it is little or a lot. When you begin to see your life as not your own, you will discover greater value in living. We spend a lot of time getting it our way. Isn't that Burger King's slogan? I don't like Burger King, not because I don't like Burger King, but because the king creeps me out. Every time I eat at Burger King, I think he's sitting in the back seat of my car. But we want it our way. And the world markets itself in a way that it exists to serve my individual fancy, whatever that may be. And so we think that the world really does revolve around us, and we find as quickly as we get into this pattern of thinking that the world is around us, we become very dissatisfied with life as a whole. And we keep seeking happiness and joy in all of these things, and what we find is the more that we seek it, the more unhappy we become. It begins to own us. This again is the slavery. It's a cycle. It's a feedback loop in our own lives. Joylessness comes when we continually hang on to lesser gods, lesser identities, lesser realities. When my life is mine alone, I will struggle and toil and anxiously work to keep what I've got. But when I finally release it, I find that I become more than I ever thought was possible. Amen. You see, this is about having a new identity in Christ. This is what it's really about. It's about worship. Because what you cling on to tightly becomes imprinted upon your life. So I was thinking about this week, and actually, I have more money in my pocket than that woman had in her hand. But can you picture her? Here's a quarter. Can you picture her coming to that box, that coffer, clinging tightly? No coin purse, just clinging tightly. This was all she had. This was all she had. And she approached that box, and in her hand was maybe the meal that night. In her hand was, I don't know, was maybe breakfast the next morning. It was her life. It was all she had right here. So she hung on to it. No one was going to pick her pockets. No one was going to lose these. She was not going to lose these coins. And she comes, and can you imagine, right before dumping those coins in there, what would have gone through her head? All of those things, all of those needs. But it's interesting. The tighter you hold on to this, and the longer you hold on to it, the more that image imprints upon your hand. And the tighter we cling these things, the more it imprints itself upon our lives. And when you let that go, then finally you have these open hands, and the God who has clung tightly to humanity now clings to you, and you to this God, and the imprint of his life begins to stamp himself upon you. And the image you bear becomes the image of Christ. It's interesting, in just a few passages earlier in this text, some people came and asked Jesus about paying taxes. And he says, whose picture is on that coin? Was it King George's or was it Caesar's? This one is George I, George Washington. Right? He was not. George would die again if he heard me say that, because he loved the republic. But Jesus looked at that coin and he said, well, then render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto God what is God's. In other words, what's the image upon your life? Here's the image upon the coin. What's the image stamped upon your life? Do you remember back in Genesis? It says we have been made in the image of God. So what we give to Caesar what is Caesar's. We give to God what is God's. Well, what is God's? That which bears his image, which is us. But in order to make this happen, here's the amazing thing. He didn't just wait for us to cling to him so that his image would become stamped in our lives. Instead, he took humanity and stamped humanity in his life. This is what Jesus did. This is what the incarnation means. It's humanity stamped upon him. And there was no separating this life. There was no sacred part and secular part. It was just one life lived, the imprint of our humanity upon his hands, the imprint of our brokenness upon his feet, the imprint of our violence with a spear thrust through his side, the imprint of our despair with a tomb and a cross. This is what Jesus did. And I thought about this earlier this week when, as a nation, we laid to rest one of my heroes, Colin Powell. What an unfortunate pronunciation of a name. I always thought it should be Colin, not Colin. But whatever. I didn't name him, but we laid this dignitary, this incredible statesman, this man of great dignity to rest. And it amazed me that as at the funeral and as people were eulogizing, there were no heads of state, there were no presidents, they were all there, but it wasn't the presidents eulogizing, it wasn't the powers that be, it wasn't the great and the powerful that got up there, it was his family, it was his close friends. And his son Michael eulogized, and I want you to hear these words because it speaks to the life of a whole person, a life of someone who gave all that they had. Here's what he says. One of my most powerful memories, this is Michael Powell reading, one of my most powerful memories comes from holding my dad's hand. I was hurt very badly and lying in an ICU bed following a bad accident. It was the middle of the night, yet my father was by my side after a long day at work. I was squirming in pain and anguish, and without a word, he just took my hand and he squeezed it with a father's love. It instantly relaxed and put me at peace. The last night of his life, I walked in to see him. Now, he was the one lying in an ICU bed. He could not see or speak to me, so I just took his hand, just as he had done. He had taken mine so many decades earlier. I knew everything was not going to be okay, but I wanted him to be at peace. Again, I felt my father's hand in that. I felt my father's love in that hand. That hand that took my mother's hand in matrimony. That hand that held me as a baby. That hand that signed report cards. That hand that taught baseball and fixed old cars. That hand that signed treaties and war orders and gestured joyfully while he was telling a story. That hand is still now. But it left, listen, a deep imprint on the lives of the family and friends, soldiers and sailors, presidents and prime ministers, and a generation of aspiring people. That hand was stamped with the imprint of service. That hand. Here's the question for us today is, what do you love? You don't have to answer that question without answering another question first. What do you sacrifice for? Can I tell you, whatever it is today, there's one who sacrificed for you first.